Good morning, everyone. Boker Tov. In just over an hour and a half from now, the funeral of Rabbi Tzvi Kogan, the Chabad rabbi who was murdered by Iranian terrorists in the United Arab Emirates, will take place in Israel, beginning in Kfar Chabad at 770 Eastern Parkway, and then he will be laid to rest. This young 28-year-old rabbi, only married a year, who was murdered and will be laid to rest in Har HaZeitim and Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. And the entire Jewish people will mourn with his family, with his beloved wife and parents, his tragic death that occurred at the hands of murderous anti-Semites who killed an innocent young man out of hatred for a Jew. And once again, the Jewish people will look to the future and say, what will happen with the Jewish future? It seems so uncertain. What will happen to Jews in Israel and around the world as our enemies are rising up against us? How will we overcome? How will we prevail? And we can take some inspiration from this week's Torah portion. This week's Torah portion is the story of Isaac and Rebekah having children and carrying on the legacy of their father Abraham. And just last week, Abraham loses his wife and purchases the cave of Machpelah, the burial plot for his wife Sarah. And he negotiates to acquire it at full price. And here we are 3,700 years later, reading about his negotiations and his insistence on acquiring an eternal burial plot in the homeland of the Jewish people, the land of Israel. And indeed, this past Shabbat, thousands of Jews from throughout Israel came to Hebron to pray and to spend Shabbat with their ancestors, with Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Leah. And if Abraham knew that thousands of years later, his children will still be praying at his gravesite that he purchased, and they will be reading once again the story of his negotiations, to be inspired by his perseverance and resilience in the face of losing his wife. And while all he had left in this world when he lost his wife was a one and only son, Isaac, who was not married, yet he began to build the Jewish future. And he married his son Isaac off to Rebekah by finding a bride through sending Eliezer and acquiring a piece of land in Israel. And here we are almost 4,000 years later, and his children are like the stars in the heaven. And the Jewish people live in the Jewish homeland, the land of Israel. And Abraham teaches us a fundamental lesson. You see, when the Jewish future is uncertain, there are two attitudes you can take. One attitude is, it is uncertain, so therefore, why should we act? But the other approach is the approach of Abraham. Because it's uncertain, therefore I must act, because I could influence the future. And while the future of the Jewish people is uncertain and unknowable, how will things evolve? One thing that is certain is that we don't know what the Jewish future will look like, but we know for sure there will always be a Jewish future. And therefore we must be a part of that Jewish future. We must become more engaged and active in creating and shaping that Jewish future. And that's why this week's Torah portion talks about Isaac redigging the wells of his father Abraham when the Philistines closed up and sealed up his wells to deny the Jewish presence in Israel, to refute the identity and the legacy of Abraham. As a son, Isaac redigs those wells until he prevails over the Philistines, teaching us that sometimes we have to dig and go deeper and deeper within ourselves to uncover our living waters of our inner wellspring of Jewishness and our soul and our Jewish pride and identity and our Jewish resilience and perseverance, to make sure that the legacy of Abraham lives on just the way Isaac prevailed. And every Jew, as we watch the funeral live from Israel, and we watch this young rabbi who sacrificed his life for the Jewish people, moved to the United Arab Emirates to embrace Judaism, to expand Judaism, and here he is being laid to rest at 28 with a young widow. We have to become inspired from him and from the first Jew, Abraham, to be like Isaac, to continue building the Jewish future. Because while we may live in uncertain times, we have the ability to shape that future, not just for ourselves, but for our children and grandchildren and all future generations, just like Abraham did, carrying on the work of Rabbi Tzvi Kogan. Last week in Israel, it was a very unusual birthday party. It's a soldier by the name of Asaf Masters, and he was killed in Lebanon just recently. A number of months ago, on the border of Lebanon, he was killed fighting, defending the Jewish people. And his mother threw a birthday party for him in the kibbutz Bahan, where 300 family and friends came to celebrate his birthday. But the guest of honor wasn't there. And his mother was asked, why are you celebrating for a birthday for your son who was killed defending the Jewish people? And she said, because last year when he was called up, when his birthday came, he was on his army base and we couldn't celebrate with him at home. So we went down to the army base, my husband and I and our children, his siblings and his girlfriend of 4 years. And we had a half hour with him on the army base to celebrate with him. We had a cake. We sang happy birthday, Yom Haledet Sameach. We ate the cake. We hugged him. We kissed him. And we left after a half hour because he had to go back to defending Israel and the Jewish people. But I looked at my son, Asaf, who was only 22 years old, and I said, listen, next year when the war is over, I'm going to throw a beautiful birthday party for you at home with all your friends and family. Tragically, he didn't live to his 23rd birthday. But I promised my son a big birthday party. So here we are. And then she said, maybe it's odd to celebrate someone's birthday when they were murdered, when they were killed, defending Israel. But then she said, the only reason he died is so that we can go on living. And so by celebrating life, we are making sure that his death was not in vain. This young rabbi died to defend spiritually the Jewish people, to build and expand the Jewish presence in the United Arab Emirates by starting a kosher store and a Jewish school. And now he died so we can live. We could live not just freely, democratically in the land of Israel, but spiritually to carry on. And when we eat kosher and when we get Jewish education for ourselves and our children, we are carrying on his holy work and we are making sure that he never dies. Let us mourn with his family today at his funeral, and then let us carry on his life by continuing to live as proud, resilient, strong Jews. And through our Jewish strength, we will shape the uncertain Jewish future to make sure that it will be certain, it will be eternal, as it always was from the days of Abraham. Have a meaningful day.